Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday, and that once upon a time was New Comic Book Day, where Marvel and DC Comics, the big publishers of superhero comic books, would bring out all their new wares to comic shops all over the country, and you could go and look at them all. and, and needless to say, that's not the model anymore. The comic book industry was shattered into 1,000 pieces by this pandemic. The companies, Marvel and DC, were slowed production, and Marvel told a lot of its writers and artists to stop working. And the one and only distributor to those comic shops went temporarily out of business and is only now starting to fumbling and crawl back to any kind of position in the industry. And on top of all that, of course, most of the comic shops in the active markets of the country have been closed for a long time, and may be closed for a long time yet. I'm of course curious to know. Always when I bring this up, where you live, is it possible to go to your comic store, or maybe are they doing curbside pickup where you let them know what you want and they have it outside for you, or however that works? I think Massachusetts is still probably a long way off from anything like that, but even when those starts of options start to become possible everywhere, who knows what the shape of the industry will be like? So I think the days of just going to your comic shop, saying hi to the the virgins who work there, and then looking at all of the new stuff and picking out what you want, I'm pretty sure those days are probably over. And I don't know what will replace them. I will miss those days. I've been with comic books, superhero comic books, for a very, very long time. But in the meantime, I'm using Wednesdays and Fridays to talk about older comics. I'm going through my long boxes. And today marks a bit of an occasion because this is the end of one long box. It's taken me this long in 2020 to go through one of those long cardboard white boxes. I have a few more of them, so we'll keep doing this. So we're just going to go through this stack here, starting with an issue of Superman that I am pretty sure I bought only for the cover. This is Superman number 685 in some previous numbering scheme. I have no idea what that numbering scheme is. I have no idea what Superman would be on now. This is an Alex Ross cover where Superman is grieving for Pa Kent, where it's just a very simple picture. I showed you a cover like this by Alex Ross where Batman's butler Alfred is just somberly holding the empty Batman suit. It's the kind of cover, very much like it. Sooner or later, somewhere down the line, I imagine there will be a big collection, a big hardcover collection of Alex Ross's comic covers. Especially since he became a prolific cover artist for DC. I imagine somewhere that will happen. Some of them are better composed than others. Some of them are wonderful. This is wonderful. Just a Superman take on the Pietà. Okay, then we go back. This is probably the 80s, 1977. Oh my, 1977. This is the Avengers, number 164 and 165, written by Jim Shooter and drawn by John Byrne. In his pre-Avengers days, where it's terrific stuff, just amazingly well done. It's an odd storyline. It's a very odd storyline in which this guy, an X-Men villain called Count Nefaria, Stanley had a thing for gentry titles, gains incredible superpowers, Superman level superpowers, and naturally attacks the Avengers with them. He doesn't live to a ripe old age. He doesn't decide to do something else. Instead, he attacks the Avengers with his Superman level superpowers. And it's really a sort of an exercise on Jim Shooter's part about how the Avengers would fare against Superman. And the answer is pretty clear. Since Marvel superheroes tend to have feet of clay, they tend to be more personally and emotionally complex and less powerful than DC superheroes. And so the answer to how would the Avengers fare, pretty much any Avengers team fare against Superman, is they would lose very quickly. And they do. This Avengers team does. This was in a time in the team's history when the Scarlet Witch, for instance, was still just a caster of mutant probability-altering hex spheres, rather than any kind of a sorceress, even a chaos sorceress. That might have tipped the scales, but otherwise, this particular team has the Beast, who can lift 1 ton. It has the Black Panther, Captain America. It has Iron Man, who is in a superpowered suit of armor that only takes him up to a certain level. It has Yellow Jacket, who can sting bank robbers unconscious. It doesn't have much. It has the closest thing that the team has to anything that would work is Wonder Man. Kind of generic superhero that somehow became popular with fans, especially when he was resurrected. He had been briefly dead, and he was resurrected as an Avenger. I've never seen any use for this character, but he was given generic super strength and invulnerability, not the ability to fly, not anything like super speed or super senses or anything like that, just super strength and invulnerability. And comes back when he's resurrected. He has those powers, and he is the closest thing to what the Avengers might have to counter Count Nefaria, but it's made clear in this storyline that Count Nefaria is much stronger than Wonder Man, and so there isn't anyone on the team who can give him even a moment of trouble. There's a great moment in these issues where he grabs Captain America's shield and realizes that even with all of his incalculable strength, he can't bend it. But really, the only Avenger who would be able to give him trouble would be Thor, and Thor shows up in the very last panel of this. This was 3 issues. This was a 3-issue storyline, and Thor shows up at the end. And then the final issue of this 3, which I notice is not with these. I have it somewhere, but it's not with these 2. The final issue of these is Thor fighting Count Nefaria, and then there's a gimmick at the end of the storyline that wraps it all up. It was kind of interesting because this is a thing that I've mentioned often, right, in connection with both the Avengers and the Justice League. What do you do when one of the traditional members of your team's roster is as powerful as all the others put together by a lot? What do you do when that's the case? I just got an Avengers graphic novel, a collection from the 1960s, where it's costumed acrobats, minor powered mutants, and Hercules, the Greek god Hercules. So they have to face that problem. And the Avengers face that problem from the beginning. Once the Hulk left the team, you have Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Wasp, Captain America, the Black Panther, and Thor, the Norse god of thunder. It was a vast imbalance in power. Same thing has often been characterized as being true with the Justice League. I've never liked those characterizations. The Justice League has Wonder Woman as a member, and the way Wonder Woman is written, the way her origin is written, the way she should be done, she is the equal of Superman. Not the person who can buy the team the longest amount of power until they find the kryptonite, but his equal, someone who can duke it out with him and won't necessarily lose, in fact might win, because she has much more combat experience than Superman. But a lot of times in Justice League incarnations, she was just a slightly stronger than average housewife who had a magic bracelets and a magic lasso and a magic plane. Lazy writers have often treated her that way. But in the real realization of the Justice League, in a good realization of the Justice League, Superman wouldn't be able to mop the floor effortlessly with the rest of the team. Especially now that Aquaman, for instance, has been given the quiet power upgrade that he has always deserved. The Martian Manhunter is physically very close to the equal of Superman. Green Lantern is often, in DC animated shows and in a lot of DC comics, Green Lantern will be seen as someone who can just make a sort of a glass wall made that's green, and that's about it. And Superman is strong enough to punch through it, and then he's out of the fight. When actually Green Lantern would give Superman much more of a trouble than that, and so on and so forth. It's the problem, the power disproportion there with the Justice League, I don't think is as bad, mainly because, like I said, Marvel heroes tend to be weaker. So when you get a really standout strong one, they tend to be relatively alone. But anyway, I will have to keep an eye out in the rest of this comic book tour for the 3rd issue in that series, because I'd like them all to be together. Okay, then we have a spin-off. This is a spin-off series of Captain America, drawn by the great Ron Garney and written by Mark Waid. This was a series called Captain America Sentinel of Liberty, that had a sort of a fold-out cover there. Terrific artwork by Ron Garney. He can do no wrong, because he doesn't rely on a lot of typical gimmicks. Instead, his panels just have this amazing kinetic energy to them. And I got a bunch of Captain America's own comic at this time was fantastic. Captain America Sentinel of Liberty was very good for probably its first 6 or 7 issues until they lost Ron Garney. So I kept getting it, especially when Wade in the early issues of Sentinel of Liberty did a story about the invaders. Did a story about Captain America and the Human Torch and Prince Namor in World War II, and I'm a sucker for those. Okay, all right, okay. Wow, this is taking a beating. Look at that. It's coming off. It's come loose from its cover. Oh my. Okay, this, I don't know anything about this. I mean, I got this because of George Perez artwork. And it has, oh my. Okay, it's the Ultraverse, which is, I guess, another superhero company of some kind from Malibu Comics, and the Marvel Universe. And this is an issue drawn by George Perez in which those two clash. And it's coming off, it's detached from its cover. I need to care for this thing or I'm going to lose it. I got it because I think it was the only issue that George Perez drew, and I'm a big fan of his artwork, especially when he does an Everybody But the Kitchen Sink issue like this, where all kinds of characters are involved. Look at that. Only George Perez. And I got it and kept it because this is another example where where would I ever find this? Who knows if Malibu Comics is even still in business? I doubt they've ever collected anything they've ever done. So this issue might be an orphan. It might just be floating around like this and in no other collection. So I held on to it, although I need to set it aside and fix it because it's not going to last much longer. There are purists among you who would say it hasn't lasted this long if the cover is fully detached from the comic. Okay, then we go back to the 80s, is that right? 1987. We go back to 1987. George Perez, the artist that I just mentioned, was given the relaunch of Wonder Woman, the re-envisioning of Wonder Woman, and he did a great job, fantastic job, very solid. My only problem with his relaunch of Wonder Woman is that he slightly depowered her. She's really, really tough, really strong in these issues. She can certainly fly under her own power at super speed, just the way she always should have been able to. None of this gliding on wind currents business that I had to put up with for decades in DC Comics. But she isn't as strong, or she isn't as powerful as she should be. There's still some sort of ingrained idea. It's still true, even in 2020, when you'd think you'd score major brownie points with social justice Puritan censors online. If you had her be Superman's equal, even now, there's something that just causes writers to halt right at the doorstep of that, and that always bugs me. I'm always happiest when I see a writer who just decides this is someone who is very old and very wise and very complex and very powerful, and we're just going to write it that way. If you can't come up with good, interesting stories and adversaries for such a character, you shouldn't be in the comic writing business. But nevertheless, George Perez's run on Wonder Woman is viewed as kind of a classic. I like it a lot, and this is issue number 8, where after Perez spends the first 7 issues on a really hit-the-ground-running story about the Greek god Ares and the rise of warfare in the world and whatnot, he then pauses to give you basically Wonder Woman's origin, basically a fact sheet on her. It's not just her origin, but a breakdown of her powers and her nature and her mission in man's world. It's one of the only single issues of the Perez Wonder Woman run that I kept. I have collections of them instead. It's quite good. They're quite good to reread. No, okay, I just mentioned this. This is Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty number 2, which does introduce the invaders. There we have the Submariner, the original Human Torch from the 1940s, who was an android, not the teen superhero on the Fantastic Four. And this is just more great Ron Garney stuff with the invaders. I got it mainly. I mainly get comic books for their artwork, but Mark Waid is a terrific comic book writer. He's responsible for some classic storylines, including one of the great storylines of all time, Kingdom Come. And I say that even though I know that in the circles of Comicsgate, I'm going to give you a Comicsgate update on Friday, but it's an online. They would say an online video YouTube-fueled consumer movement, and their critics would say an online hate movement. But one way or another, they are a very, very important factor in the 21st century view of comics. Very important, more important than their critics give them credit. And Mark Waid is a touchstone of evil among them, because there's an idea, there's a case to be made, obviously, because it is a federal case. There's a case to be made that he interfered with the work contract by a comic skater who had a contract with a publisher to bring out his comic book. And the case that has gone to court is, or that is wending its way to court, is that Wade interfered with that. That he made a phone call or two, threats, that sort of thing, to get the contract voided, which is of course illegal. If it's true, then he broke the law. The court case has been dragging on for a long time. I imagine it's going to drag on for a long time more. And that in itself is very, very bad. that is no matter what kind of good work Mark Waid has done writing comic books, if your strategy when someone takes you to court, well, a comic skater I'll talk about on Friday took Mark Waid to court for tortious interference. If somebody does that to you, and you maintain that there was no tortious interference, that you did nothing wrong, that there was no coercion, no arm twisting of any kind, but you instruct your lawyer or allow your lawyer to instruct you that your strategy is going to be to pauperize your opponent in pre-trial motions. In other words, to make it a marathon in which your opponent simply runs out of money in order to avoid the whole thing going to court, then you're guilty. You can say all that you want, but if someone brings a case against you saying, look, you interfered with my contract, you cost me business, it's against the law, I'm suing you, and your response is, no, I didn't, well, then what you should do is be telling your lawyer to hurry this thing to trial. And instead, the strategy here is the exact opposite, and that is the strategy of a guilty person. Someone who doesn't want there to be a trial because he knows he'll lose. It would be seismic for the comic book industry if Mark Waid lost, because he is a big figure. But we'll talk all about that on Friday. But the point I was trying to make is that I've always found him a very competent, very good writer. I've almost never read a Marvel comic written by Mark Waid and thought, boy, those people were out of character, or boy, that development seemed forced. Instead, he seems very good at it. I don't know if he still is. I don't know if he works at Marvel or DC anymore. He seems like a fairly toxic person. If I were them, Kingdom Come or no Kingdom Come, I would probably distance myself. But, okay, well, here's another example. This is Scott Hama and writing Batman, which is a match made in heaven, but it's not the reason I got this. The reason I got this is because the artwork is by Scott McDaniel, who is a fantastic Batman artist, just incredibly good. I mean, he's a fantastic artist anyway, but he is made to draw Batman, just made to do it. Look at the way that he does this, a particular signal of this section of his career is the way he indicates motion by having the character simply appear multiple times in the same panel. There is Batman moving in that direction, and you're just supposed to see that as let me see if I can find another example here. You're supposed to see that as a way that this is happening. Just fantastically good way to do this. And with lots and lots of, oh my, the details here, these are just so beautiful. They're just so beautiful. See, here you go. He's just giving you a panel with no breaks, no nothing, no motion lines. Notice it's the explosion of dust that gives you an indication of motion and the motion's ending. Instead, it's just Batman in the panel moving. That's just wonderful. He does makes all sorts of great decisions like that. Sometimes a fantastic architectural decision just in one panel, so that you look at that. Another signature is that his Batman is always wreathed in actual bats. They're always just, look at that, pouring out of a full moon, just beautiful. All that effort for one dialogue panel, just amazing. A big fat volume of Scott McDaniel Batman. Steve would like that. Steve would like that very much. Okay, then we have Savage Dragon. We saw this already. This is a team-up between Savage Dragon and Hellboy. Fans have been clamoring for this for a long time. They're two of the most famous and reader-popular quasi-superhero characters who are not Marvel or DC. And there was a two-part issue where they team up. This is Volume 1. We've already seen Volume 2. I liked it a lot. It's Eric Larson artwork, and you either like Eric Larson artwork or you don't. I tend to like it. But I really should. Again, I should, when all this back issue nonsense is over, I should make sure to put these things with their companions. This issue is no good without the other one. Okay, here's another example of that. This is another Savage Dragon run. I mostly liked Savage Dragon when it was not drawn by Eric Larson. I mostly liked him drawn by other people. And this is the Dragon Blood and Guts miniseries. This is issue number 2. We've already seen issues number 1 and 3, so these need to be coalesced somehow. Okay, then we have Nexus. I've mentioned Nexus many times before. There is also a Comicsgate connection with Nexus now, which amazes me and makes the whole Comicsgate story even more personal feeling for me. So we'll talk all about that on Friday. Nexus was created by Mike Barron and Steve Rude, these two cool dudes, and he is a murderer of mass murderers. He's not a Marvel superhero. He's not a DC superhero. And this is Nexus' 50th anniversary. It's full of beautiful color artwork. Just amazing. Again, I should put all my Nexus issues together, so that, among many other things, so that I know what I have. I'm not ever going to find a block of Nexus back issues again, I'm pretty sure. I will instead hope that sooner or later, Barron and Rude, or whoever owns Nexus or whatever, will get their act together and create a beautiful, fully restored, color redone hardcover or paperback omnibus of their character, so that I don't have to go piecemeal anymore for one connection or another. Oh my. Okay, then we go back to, oh god, it's 1968. Wow. This is Marvel Superheroes. Marvel did this. This was one of the many kinds of things like this that they did. Basically a catch-all kind of title, where they could do one-shots and whatnot. Frida's pounding on me, but I made a promise that I wouldn't show her in comic book videos. Baby, I'm sorry. You're going to have to wait. One-shot things, no central continuity you would give if somebody had drawn an inventory story for a minor character. You might run it in Marvel Superheroes. Marvel has done a number of comics like that over the years. This one is Marvel Superheroes number 15, which is an individual adventure by Medusa, a character who was introduced as Madame Medusa and who was later revealed to be a member of the Inhumans, a sequestered race of super beings. She has complete control over her enormous elastic hair. And believe it or not, that makes her more interesting than you might think. This is written by Stan Lee and is drawn by Gene Colan, who does a fantastic job. He's one of my favorite artists anyway, but even when he's doing straight up superhero stuff, he can be very, very good. Writers often underestimate how powerful Medusa would be. One nerdy fan wrote in when she was briefly a member of the Fantastic Four, and a nerdy fan wrote in describing exactly how powerful her hair would be if it was anything like normal human hair. Then she'd be able to lift many tons with her hair. And then the official handbook of the Marvel Universe came out telling us pretty much how her hair works. It would be even more powerful. No one ever really does her this way. It's a classic Stan Lee character design, because he could be a bit of a sexist. Stan Lee could be. And so he had female characters who were constantly vamping after their hunky male cohorts. And you've got a lot of his female characters relied on basically jewelry for their power, and the Medusa relies on her hair. What's next? A female character relies on her makeup? And you see what I mean. It's a kind of a trite way to do things, but he redeems himself in many Inhumans appearances, and also in this standalone thing, by writing her a lot better than that. And she's been written a lot better in subsequent years as well. People have taken her gimmick and just run with it, and I've loved that. I have a soft spot for the Inhumans, and especially for Medusa and her husband Black Bolt, who is the king of the Inhumans but cannot speak. So she is his interpreter. I've always thought that was a fascinating power dynamic that almost nobody explores. But again, the reason that I would keep something like this is because I have no idea where it would ever be collected. Where would anybody ever collect this? Marvel Superheroes did a one-shot of the Black Knight. I believe it was Marvel Superheroes that introduced Captain Marvel, Marvel's victory in court to own the copyright to the name Captain Marvel, so that Fawcett and DC couldn't use it. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy, the original Guardians of the Galaxy from Marvel, premiered in Marvel Superheroes, also drawn by Gene Colan, if I remember correctly. But I don't think these things have ever been collected. I would love it if they were, because I liked quite a few of those issues. But that's the reason I held on to this, because I don't know where I would see it otherwise. Oh my. Okay, this is going to be the 80s. This is going to be the 1980s. Yes. No, 1995. This is 1995. I bought this comic for a while. I don't know why. I never really enjoyed it. But I know why I kept this particular issue. This is a character called Damage, a teenage boy whose superpower is that his body is coursing with energy that can give him super strength and partial invulnerability. And the problem is that the code name arises from the fact that every once in a while he loses control of that energy and it just explodes and can take out a city block. And he's not always aware that's going to happen. And so it's a great premise for a teenage character to have him be a force for good, someone who wants to be a do-gooder, but who might be more of a danger to the people around him than a help. But I never found that he had his own run. He had his own comic book in the 90s, and I bought it and I read it, and I never thought the comic made enough of the potential involved. And the only reason that I kept this particular issue, this is issue number 12, is because this is a reflection of Marvel's brief flirtation with photo covers. Where it is just a person on the cover and not a drawing. They did this. The Ray also had a comic. He had a couple of photo covers. I think Peter Parker had a couple of them. And just as an oddity, I kept it. I have no idea if this 90s run on Damage has been collected or ever would be. I have no idea if the character has any fans. But I kept this issue. Oh, okay, all right. This is another one. We saw this. This is X Factor, number 79. Never liked mutant books. Never was all that interested in them. The X-Men maybe a little, but X Factor, X Force, Extinction, X Sanguinate, whatever they're called. I was never really all that interested in them. Especially when they stopped losing recognizable characters. When they started losing recognizable characters that I like and started bringing on second stringers that I knew nothing about. The only reason that I kept this issue is because of the artwork. This is by Bill Fern, who we saw in an issue of I believe it was Legion. He's really quite good, and I don't think he did any other issues of X Factor, so I just kept this one because there'll never be a Bill Fern collected volume. I don't think he draws comics anymore. I think he's gone out of the industry completely. Okay, and then we'll finish up with more Nexus. This was so good. This is Mike Baron and Steve Rude, and this is a team-up between Nexus and Magnus Robot Fighter. That is Magnus Robot Fighter. An old character from... God, I don't even remember who his original publishers were. But here you get a one-page description of his story. He was a human in a future world that is full of robots. Most of them good, but some of them bad and full of bad humans as well. And Magnus has been trained from birth to be a superior human being, someone who's been trained for so long in his physical abilities that he can actually shatter a robot. He can defeat a robot in battle. And he wears an energy-deflecting tunic, and not much of one, as you can see, but still an energy-deflecting tunic. And I thought his adventures were fantastic. Look at that, Steve Rude drawing Magnus the Robot Fighter, fantastic. I loved his adventures. I have a collected volume of the originals somewhere. They brought me endless joy to this guy whose only defining superhero characteristic is that he punches robots. There's a simplicity to that's just downright admirable. Although, right from the beginning, I have maintained right from and irritated comic book fans by maintaining right from the beginning that it just could not be any more obvious that Magnus the Robot Fighter is himself a robot. That couldn't be any more obvious. No matter how long you train human flesh, it's not going to be able to punch through steel. And an energy deflecting tunic. Oh, come now. No, he's obviously a robot. But nobody ever... He's had many relaunches over time, and I have some of those. But I still prefer the original adventures of his with Russ Manning artwork. And here, Steve Rude intentionally tries to mimic Russ Manning artwork a bit from time to time. And I loved this adventure as well. I just wish I had both. I think it was a two-parter, and I think I have the other one somewhere, but it's not with this one. Uh, so, so it was a fairly fragmented comic book day, but that's part and parcel for our trip through my long boxes. So I'm going to put these back in the long box from whence I drove them, and then I will have to find another long box. They're scattered all over here. They're not all in one place, but I will find another one, and who knows what we'll find in it. I will reconvene next Wednesday, and we'll find out. Oh no, I'll do some back issues on Friday as well. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. It's gone on long as usual, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.